Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the summertime. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the summertime. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the summertime. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the summertime.
Good morning. Morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where we join together to create a nourishing liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Welcome everyone. It's always great to have you with us. Whether you're here in person or you're streaming live with us, we embrace all that you bring with you, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, your differences, all that makes you who you are. So welcome to one and all. I don't have any special announcements today, but I did want to give a shout out to my new friends in Port Townsend. I traveled to Port Townsend for about a part of 3 days this week, and saw a couple of old friends. Some of you might remember Lou Manrique and Tess Taff, who were members of this congregation and moved over there. Why would anybody want to live in Port Townsend? I have no idea. But I got to stay with them and catch up with them. But also several members of the Unitarian congregation there. We had a meeting off-site, probably about 55, 60 people or so, when you count those who were on Zoom with us, and talked about some of the issues and concerns we have with the UUA these days. And it was really nice to get to know some supportive friends, many of whom stream our services. So again, thank you all so much for your hospitality, for your courage, for your commitment to trying to preserve liberal religion in our country. And I also thank those folks who showed up who did not necessarily agree with me. Some voices that had different opinions, but behave very much like we would expect Unitarians to behave when we have differences, and even to be able to genuinely embrace each other and thank one another for the relationship that was fostered. So it's really a great positive experience, and I wanted to let you know about it, and I wanted to take an opportunity here this morning to thank everybody for streaming with us, but a special hello to my new friends in Port Townsend. So. Okay, speaking of friends, why don't we take a couple of minutes now to greet one another. Hope you'll say hi to some friends that you look forward to seeing each Sunday, and if you're joining us for the first time, don't be shy. We're glad you're here. Sorry to interrupt your social hour. The energy of the first service was the same way. Lots of excitement. So we'll continue this during social hour, but let's go ahead and light our chalice, the symbol of our faith, of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion. What's up?
I beg your pardon. So, anybody with some medical background? We got somebody down in the lobby.
Oh, okay. Somebody is down in the lobby, I'm being told. Is there anybody with medical background who... Gordon is going to go that way. And thank you. Yep. All right, that would be very helpful. Thank you. And if someone will just let us know at some point in the service that they're taken care of, can you do that for us? Just give me the thumbs up and say they're taken care of. They are taken care of? Okay. Are they conscious, alert? It's going to be hard for us to move forward with our service until we... Yeah, good. We did, yeah, last week. Last week. Yeah. So, thank you. We'll just hold off for a minute, make sure that there's not I'm more concerned about a life-threatening situation. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so we okay? Feel like we can move forward? Yeah? All right. Okay, she's in good hands. Did we light our chalice? Okay, I can't remember where we were, but... We'll just go ahead and count it as having gone through that. I think I was interrupted in the middle of the usual saying, but that's okay. I can let that go and ask Candace to do our opening reflection. We'll be back on track.
The opening words are from a poem, The World's Citizen, written by Susie Kassim. Do not focus too much on the East and forget the West, and do not ignore the South to speak for the North. What happens in the East has effects in the North, as the West has on the South. And do not focus on one species and ignore another, or love your father but ignore your mother, or love your sister but ignore your brother. Do not forget each other. We are all part of each other. We are all one.
Our first in-service hymn of the morning is number 133. You can find it in your hardback gray hymnal or on the screen. And the title is One World. Please stand as you're willing and able.
All right, thank you for your help. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, Gordon. We are now going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning. And I think whoever collapsed in the lobby is on our hearts and minds, so we'll kindle a candle for her. And also start with a candle for the people of Ukraine, who I know we continue to have much concern for. As I will be speaking later today on One World, I think Ukraine is a very current situation that reminds us of how connected we are to others, no matter where they're from. Also a candle for our church operations manager, Rebecca Adams, whose dog Junie died this past week after 15 years as a faithful companion to her and and later to her sons as they came along. So this was their first dog, and they're both under 10 years old, so Junie's been around a long time in their lives. So please think of them as well today. And let's take a moment of silence on behalf of others that you might be thinking of, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
Thank you for that beautiful music. And Todd, thank you for giving me a stool so that I don't have to be on tippy-toe when I'm reading a story. All right, I'd like to invite any children to come on forward. Thanks, Suri. All right. So this morning's story is written by Martha Dallas, and she first got the idea at the New England Holocaust Memorial. Once there was a place that was very bleak and dreary. All the colors there were only shades of gray and brown. Nothing grew there. No grass, no flowers, no trees. And this place was surrounded by walls and fences. People lived in this place. Every day they were forced to work digging holes and then shoveling the dirt they dug out back into those same holes. This work made them feel tired and their bodies ached. And they felt hopeless, for their work never amounted to anything. The food they ate was just a little bread and broth. Their bellies were never full because they were always hungry. And they got sick a lot because this food wasn't very nutritious. At night, they slept on hard wooden beds. They had no pillows or blankets, so they were cold and they shivered throughout much of the night. When they did sleep, they had bad dreams, and when they woke up, they were just as tired as they'd been the night before. One morning, in this sad place, a little girl went out, and suddenly she saw something on the ground, something special and precious. It was, do you have any guesses? A red raspberry. Quickly, she picked it up. Oh, but it was so special to her. Imagine a bleak and dreary place, and there was a red raspberry on the ground. She picked it up and slipped it into her pocket. She kept it safe there all day. She didn't squish it. And that night she found a leaf that had blown in from the outside. She put the leaf in her hand and placed the red raspberry on the leaf and went to her friend and presented it to her friend as a gift. And her friend received it. I tell you this story not only because it reminds us that in the most sad, hopeless, bleak, and dreary places, we can, if we keep our eyes open, find miraculous surprises, treasures that are bright and sweet and delicious like that raspberry. But more importantly, when we find these treasures, we can give them up, give them away to a friend. This story is true. It actually happened. And I want you to remember this story. So today, I brought some raspberries. And kids can come up front, and Todd will give you, there we go, a raspberry. And I want you to come and take one, and then hold it in your hand, and when everybody who wants one has one, I'll tell you what to do next. Alex, are you sure you don't want one? Okay. All right, so hold your raspberry and imagine that your world is dreary, sad, hopeless, and bleak. And now imagine that your friend has just given you this raspberry. This raspberry is the one thing your friend truly loved, or truly owned, and she chose to make it a gift for you. And when you've imagined that, then you can enjoy your raspberry. Eat it, and always remember. And now please join me in singing our children out to Play Club.
For the meditation today, the words of Yehuda Berg. A true community is not just about being geographically close to someone or being part of the same social network. It's about feeling connected and responsible for what happens. Humanity is our ultimate community, and everyone plays a crucial role.
I'm going to read today from my own book, Evolution's Way Towards Exponentially Higher States of Complexity, Consciousness, and Unity, in which I have a chapter entitled The Evolution of Oneness. We still seem far from establishing the peaceful world John Lennon asked us to imagine. A world with nothing to kill or die for. There is still plenty of killing and dying going on, as well as lots of greed, poverty, inequality, and injustice. And some of the global institutions and agreements we've established have only worsened the plight of many people. But there is also reason to believe our continued advance towards world unity will eventually prioritize our shared concerns. Combating global warming, economic inequality, overpopulation, pandemics, and war will begin to take precedent over the systems of greed and injustice a few are still trying to prop up and expand in this new age. So it's important that we begin speaking in terms of our new reality, openly speaking of the end of nations, at least as we have known them. By acknowledging this new reality, we can better and more honestly address it and work together to erect new institutions and new agreements that consider the needs of everyone in the world.
So I'm sitting here playing the opening stanzas to this, and I'm looking at my microphone, and I thought, something's wrong about that. I need to bring that microphone up closer. I gotta tell you, I've been racking my brain, hoping to find a way out. I've had enough of this continual rain. A change is coming, no doubt. It's been too long a time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. It's been too long a time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. cannot give. I feel so lonesome inside. I have a dream that I wish I could live. It's burning holes in my mind. It's been a long, lonely time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. It's been too long a time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. It's been a long, lonely time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. It's too long a time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. And I'm ready for the times to get better. And I'm ready for the times to get better.
Thank you, Lyle. I think we can all agree with those sentiments. And it's great to have you performing with us again. I was trying to remember the last time you were here. Was it during COVID? Were you one of our performers when we opened it up for live performances?
No, I kind of felt like I just never got out of the house.
Never got out of the house. So this is your
Never.
first time since the COVID pandemic started?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Yeah. What's that? Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
he was here for the picnic. Yeah, but you were the only one who stayed for that. No, I'm kidding. I'm teasing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm sort of glad that, I can do this and not have to mask and whatnot now.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
great. So,
Well, it's great to have you back.
yeah, it's really nice to be
Yeah, thank you.
Nora is the one who collapsed, and she is being transported. She had low vital signs, so she's being transported.
Okay, but who was it? Oh, okay. Oh, gosh. All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So just to fill you in, Laura, our usher, for those who know Laura, was having apparently passed out and had a few low vital signs they were concerned about, so they have transported her to the hospital. Okay. So we will keep her in our thoughts, our fingers crossed. Thank you. Yeah, Doug Hugan passed away earlier this week. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we ready for the sermon? We okay? Let's all take a deep breath. So during his commencement speech at Oberlin College in 1965, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. memorably said, "We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny," which I know you've probably heard many times in your lives. It was something that he wanted his graduates or the graduates he was addressing, I should say, to know and remember as they moved into their work in the world. And it has since remained in our conscience because it seems like such an obvious truth, as obvious perhaps as it is inescapable, but also inexplicable and mysterious. How can it be true that all people and all life are interconnected? For some strange reason, King continued, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. Inescapable a truth as it is still one we need to grasp and remember today. Although it may seem less inexplicable today than it was in 1965. For if COVID-19 has taught us anything, perhaps less eloquently than Dr. King did, it is the same message as his. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. And we cannot be what we ought to be until others are also what they ought to be, because we are all in this thing together. Just as the pandemic does not recognize nations or their borders or distinguish between their citizens and their leaders, the same must be true of its cure. It is not enough for the wealthiest nations like ours to vaccinate its citizens or their citizens if the pandemic is allowed to continue spreading elsewhere in the world. Otherwise, its variants will keep evolving and spreading among us. The pandemic has also taught us how fragile our global supply chain is. Everything from toilet paper to peanut butter and from computer chips to automobiles have skyrocketed in price and have become scarce, at least at times. And when a few people get laid off from work, then choose not to go back to those same jobs, it becomes difficult to get timely and adequate service anywhere. And when one nation goes to war with another, as Putin's war against Ukraine has reminded us, it can quickly lead to price inflation and hunger in other places around the globe. Dr. King understood this in 1965, which is why 2 years after his speech at Oberlin, he repeated them during his Christmas Eve service at his own Ebenezer Baptist Church, going on to say, yes, as nations and individuals, we are interdependent. Did you ever stop to think that you can't leave your job for your job in the morning without being dependent on most of the world? You get up in the morning and go to the bathroom and reach for the sponge, and that's handed to you by a Pacific Islander. You reach for a bar of soap, and that's given to you by the hands of a Frenchman. And then you go into the kitchen to drink your coffee for the morning, and that's poured into your cup by a South American. And maybe you want tea. That's poured into your cup by a Chinese. Or maybe you're desirous of having cocoa for breakfast, and that's poured into your cup by a West African. And then you reach over for your toast, and that's given to you at the hands of an English-speaking farmer, not to mention the baker. And before you finish eating breakfast in the morning, you've depended on more than half the world. This is the way our universe is structured, he says. This is its interrelated quality. We aren't going to have peace on earth until we recognize this basic fact of the interrelated structure of all reality. As obvious as all this seems, transcending our national identities in order to grasp our human identities as a global species is no easier for us than it was in 1965. In some ways, extreme nationalism is making an unsettling comeback. Nationalism is, after all, the opposite of globalism and can be expected to increase in reaction against it. Nationalism refers to identifying mostly with the country that one is from. to identifying as an American or a Russian or a Japanese and so on. As a species that is instinctively and innately fearful of the unknown, it only seems likely many of us will react to the sudden, rapid, unexpected changes happening around us because of globalization by seeking safety in our old patterns of thinking. The emergence of populist leaders like Donald Trump is a good example. Trump's message about making America great again is a chord struck in the psyche of millions of Americans worried about how quickly the world is changing around them. His promise to build a border wall, his ban on Muslims, his separation of immigrant children from their parents, the rise of white nationalism during his administration are all examples of the desire of some to retreat from the rest of the world. The United Kingdom's 2016 vote to leave the European Union, which it had been part of since 1973, represents another example of recoiling into nationalism. Brexit, as the decision made by barely half the nation, as it is called, finally occurred in 2020, although this is more in name only. For it is not possible for a nation like the UK to truly withdraw from the many countries its economy, including businesses, employees, and families, have become entwined with and dependent upon for decades. Exiting from our dependence upon the global community is not possible in today's world. Putin's war in Ukraine can also be viewed as his wish to return to a Cold War world that this former KGB agent once knew and still pines for. Putin imagines he can re-enter his comfort zone by slowly recreating the Eastern Bloc and erecting a new Iron Curtain to keep him and his country shielded from the rest of the world. But as he is learning, this is no longer possible. We have also seen the rise of nationalist leaders in Japan, Turkey, India, the Philippines, France, Italy, China, South Africa, to name just a few, in reaction to the new global existence that we are already in, but still have no framework for understanding or talking about. We still identify ourselves mostly according to which nation we are from, rather than as the related, connected, and interdependent planetary species we have recently become and have been becoming since our first appearance on Earth. As historian Yuval Harari says in his book, Sapiens, when viewing history from the vantage point of millennium, not centuries, it becomes crystal clear that history is moving relentlessly toward unity. He goes on to explain that over the millennia, small, simple cultures gradually coalesce into bigger and more complex civilizations so that the world contains fewer and fewer megacultures, each of which is bigger and more complex. Right? So we went from unknown thousands or millions of small tribes or bands to fewer and fewer large communities, which would lead us to believe we're moving towards one large community. And this has resulted in less than just 200 nations in the world today. Just 200 nations. A world that in just the past few years has become more whole through the advent of communications technology than even our small neighborhoods were in the past. But the age of nationalism, or what we might also call the age of the nation state, is an invention of the Enlightenment and its emphasis upon having a governing state as opposed to being ruled by the church or a monarchy. As Hans Kohn explained in his classic 1944 book, The Idea of Nationalism, nationalism as we understand it is not older than the second half of the 18th century. Right? This is not how it has always been. So the age of the nation-state is relatively short-lived. Only a few centuries ago, he says, man's loyalty was due to his church or religions. A heretic put himself beyond the pale of society as a traitor to his nation does today. This fixation of man's supreme loyalty upon his nationality marks the beginning of the age of nationalism. The age of nationalism started in the 1800s and is waning, if not already over, already ended. In many ways, I'm sure it has. He also says this identification with the life and aspirations of millions whom we shall never know, with a territory we shall never visit in its entirety, right? Because to be part of a nation, there are millions we will never know and many places we will never visit, is based on two fictitious concepts. One, that race or blood is the basis of nationality. As if there are different races and bloods, right? So that's a fiction. And two, that there is a unified national character that creates the nation. Something about everyone in the nation that makes it what it is. In reality, both race and national character are fictions. Any community is a conglomeration of different people with different ways. Although both the state and sometimes its citizenry do much to try to force conformity and to give advantage to majorities or majority opinions or what have you, there remains many differences. As such, nationalism prevents us as a species from recognizing the truth about ourselves. That all human beings share the same narrow lineage and are part of one community no matter where we are from or where we live, and that, to paraphrase Dr. King, none of us can ever achieve our full potential until all of us are free to do so. Yet today, almost 60 years later, nationalism remains the most entrenched line dividing the human family, albeit but a fiction in our imaginations. The borders we overlay atop the maps that falsify the earth's undivided terrain, and the names we give the territories, the lines that we draw, demarcate, and most identify ourselves with, have no independent existence. If you look at the planet from space, you won't see any of those lines dividing us. And this is more evident to us now in this historic moment than it has been for 200 years. Probably for longer than that, but in the past 200 years, in the age of the nation state. Some of you may remember, I remember this well, the United Auto Workers campaign in the 1980s calling for an end to Japanese imports. Remember this? It was a big deal, sometimes violently. An American of Chinese ancestry was murdered in 1982 by two auto workers because they felt he'd stolen their jobs. Many companies at the time prohibited foreign cars from parking in their lots. And it was common for some people to vandalize them with sledgehammers or by other means. At the time, it was especially risky or scary to be caught driving a Japanese import. A rice burner. That's where they got the name rice burner. Derogatory term. That was in the 1980s. Today, this is hardly the case. A short time later, this is hardly the case. Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, Mazda, Subaru, Acura, Kia, Suzuki are all among the most popular cars in the U.S., representing dozens of manufacturing plants that provide millions of U.S. jobs. Today, the Buy American movement is all but dead in the U.S. Instead, it now has a variety of foreign companies that have become important employers, a significant part of our economy, and a benefit to consumers. This is but one example of how quickly things have changed and how much more Dr. King is right now than he was in 1965 about our global dependence upon one another. Only now, instead of having depended upon half the world before completing breakfast, we are more likely to have depended upon the entire world. Today, we may still psychologically identify as Americans or Russians or Australians or Chinese or Ugandans or Turks or Saudi Arabians and so forth. But we are worldlings. We are earthlings, part of a single global community and one human family, a reality that is becoming increasingly difficult to deny and that is already impossible to escape. Just ask the Brexiters. As we have learned most recently, we share global pandemics. Right? The pandemics don't discriminate. They make their way. We share a global supply chain. It's also become apparent due to global warming that we share one global environment. One planet. We have a global economy, global banks, global businesses, global employment, global investors and property owners, global debt, global education, global entertainment, global laws and treaties and trade, global science and medicine, and a global space program, along with a global World Wide Web and global communications that make us accessible to almost anyone on the planet. I know because I get spam calls from them all day long. In light of all these things and more, it no longer makes sense to understand us as anything less than a global community. We ignore this reality at our peril, the peril of appointing despots to lead us so we can desperately cling to our national identities, the peril of depending on impotent national governments that don't quite know how to govern in the new global reality. The peril of failing to do what we must to face the reality by developing what systems are necessary for maintaining a prosperous and peaceful global society. Those are the systems we need to erect. And the peril of failing to become all that we can be as individuals by recognizing that our brothers and sisters everywhere must have that same opportunity. See, in the global reality, we can't just make America great again. That can't work. We might begin by strengthening the United Nations and global democracy, including giving people from around the world a voice and a vote in the matters that most impact us all. Just as we have local, state, and national elections, we should have international elections that include the voices of our international neighbors. We can also start by adopting, even improving, the United Nations 1945 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. These rights ensure that every man, woman, and child, anywhere on the planet, are born free and equal without discrimination and have a right to life and to safety. They promise a world without slavery or torture or unlawful detention, a world where these rights are protected by global law, where everyone has equal protection under that law and a right to a fair trial no matter where they are from or where they travel to. As Chief Joseph understood long ago, the earth is the mother of all people, and all people should have equal rights upon it. We have to establish that kind of global system of human rights. Finally, the time has come for more of us to begin speaking in what we might call cosmopolitan terms, framing ourselves and all of humanity as part of a global community in order to foster a greater sense of worldwide camaraderie, compassion, connection, and responsibility. Our species has been expanding our sense of identity throughout our time here on Earth. First, we identified with only a handful of individuals in our small family-sized troops. Then we identified with a larger cluster of families we were part of, our tribes. Then we identified with the people ruled by one king in a small kingdom. Then we expanded our view by identifying with an entire province or state ruled by a governor appointed by a monarch we might never even see. Then around 200 years ago, we came to identify with the entire nation that we are part of, even if it is too large for us to fully traverse and its people too numerous to know. So you see, our circle of inclusion, of identity, keeps radiating outward. The next expansion of awareness, which is the reality we are now in, requires of us, is to realize that we are part of one world and that we are intricately connected to everyone on the planet, even if it is impossible for us to go everywhere or to know everyone. We are all neighbors now. We are all neighbors now, part of one human society and one human family. I believe many of the major problems that we are experiencing in the world today, some of them existential threats, are happening because we are transitioning to this global identity, resulting in the disruption of almost everything, including how we have long understood ourselves and the world we are in. Such disruption feels like chaos, which makes us want to hold on tightly to the small world, the smaller world we have known, to our national identities, and to even smaller identities as groups, right? This explains why identitarianism and identity politics and identity groups are on the rise. It's a desperate attempt to cling to something in the wake of the chaos, the transformative chaos happening around us. And we must now loosen our grip in order to widen our arms and embrace the truth that is before us, that we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny, and for some strange reason I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. Thank you.
Well, we're going to sing actually a new song to us this morning. It's by somebody we know, Pat Humphreys, who is part of Emma's Revolution. She wrote this song way back in 1986, believe it or not. And it has a refrain that goes through it. We will rise all together, we will rise. I'm sure you can climb onto that much of it. So please stand as you're able to learn a new song. In a many-colored garden, we are growing side by side. We will rise all together, we will rise.
With the sun and rain upon us, not a row will be denied. We will rise all together, we will rise. We will rise like the ocean, we will rise like the sun. We will rise all together, we will rise. In our many-colored fabrics made from strands of common thread, we will rise all together, we will rise. We can feed our grain to cattle, and the rich man will be fed. We will rise all together, we will rise. Or we'll feed our grain to people so that millions will have bread. We will rise all together, we will rise. We will rise like the ocean, we will rise like the sun. We will rise all together, we will rise. No more will there be hunger in these strands of common thread. We will rise all together, we will rise. In the cold of fear and hatred, clothed in dignity we stand. We will rise all together, we will rise. We have pieced this quilt together, linking hearts with stitching hands. We will rise all together, we will rise. We will rise like the ocean, we will rise like the sun. We will rise all together, we will rise. We are spirits drawn together tightly by our common threads. We will rise all together, we will rise. From our children to our elders, from all nations we will rise. We will rise all together, we will rise. May respect for all our differences enhance our common ties. We will rise all together, we will rise. We will rise like the ocean, we will rise like the sun. We will rise all together, we will rise. We will build a global family strengthened by our common threads. We will rise all together, we will rise. We will rise all together, we will rise.
For the benediction, the words of Jean Vanier. He's a Canadian Catholic theologian and philosopher. One of the marvelous things about community is that it enables us to welcome and help people in a way we couldn't as individuals. When we pool our strength and share the work and responsibility, we can welcome many people, even those in deep distress, and perhaps help them find self-confidence and inner healing. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom.